Great lawyers don't always know how to build great law firms. Let's change that. Join Ben Gideon as he shares hard-won lessons from building his own financially successful law firm and practical insights from top law firm entrepreneurs, business consultants, and more. This is a podcast for lawyers, by lawyers. Welcome to Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm. Produced and powered by Law Pods.
This episode of Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm is brought to you by Vision Spark. Vision Spark is a recruiting firm that helps small businesses like law firms find chief operating officers or integrators, similar to one Jeffrey Wright, who's with me here today. Jeff, I know that you had a good experience working with Vision Spark. I mean, thinking about it you talk about it from the standpoint that of the recruitee, but can you think about it from the standpoint of the firm that doesn't have any understanding how to find somebody like that, what value that might bring?
Yeah, I think if you have a key role in your firm and you don't have the internal expertise to identify the appropriate candidates and vet them, which most of us don't, you're not going to have a fully built out HR department, most likely, that has those chops to be able to do that. I think utilizing an outside firm, Vision Spark, I know you wound up hiring me, Ben, but you said the wealth of candidates that they brought to you from really all areas of the country, you were amazed at.
Yeah, we had a really great slate of candidates, people I would never have expected would have been interested in coming to Maine or transitioning from different fields to work for us. And a lot of that was driven by the way we presented the job and job description. And that process actually has taught us enormous amount about how to recruit generally. So now we're recruiting for even legal assistants or paralegals. We're modeling our recruiting process internally based on what we learned from Vision Spark. And we're doing it ourselves in those cases, but it's been game-changing even for other types of hires.
Yeah. And I think anyone balking at a cost of using an outside firm needs to take a step back and look at the cost of making a bad hire yourself, investing the time, money, and training into that person that is not going to be with you long term and may not be a good fit from jump. The small cost you're going to pay vastly outweighs a situation like that.
Agreed. We're also brought to you today by Supio. Supio is a AI firm that specializes in helping plaintiffs' trial lawyers organize their cases, create medical timelines, chronologies, summaries of medical bills. You can upload depositions and do cross comparisons. There's a whole host of things you can do. It's a very well designed and conceived platform that had input from lawyers from the very beginning. Jerry, the CEO and founder of the company, said on our podcast, it's a delightful dashboard.
Yes.
I really enjoyed his use of the word delightful to describe software, which only proves that he's a software engineer. But you guys should check it out. You can go to their website. They do an online demo there, or you can call them up and they'll do a demo for your firm and you can see if you can put it to use for you. And finally, we're brought to you today by 1% for Planet. 1% for Planet is an organization where all members agree to contribute 1% of their gross revenues to environmental nonprofits. From our inception at Gideon Asen, we've been members of 1% for Planet. I can tell you that 1% of our gross revenues has gone up dramatically over 5 years to the point where it's quite a large contribution. It supports many different, very valuable organizations here in Maine and the Northeast, and has allowed us to develop some really great relationships with those folks.
Yeah. I think also the one thing about 1% for the Planet that you've mentioned before is anyone that signs up for it, let us know and we'll be sure to give you a shout out on the podcast. So today's episode of Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm, obviously Jeff Wright, Chief Operating Officer here at Gideon Asen, Ben Gideon, co-founder, partner, owner. We're going to talk about we've wrapped up decision making in our last episode, and we're going to talk about modeling out your vision plan. I look at it that it's similar to almost a business plan of somebody doing a pure startup, and where you want that company to go, and how what your time frames and goals are. Is it as simple as that, Ben? Is that how you started it?
It's a great question because I debated the use of the term business plan versus vision plan for this episode. When I started this law firm, we called what we had originally created as a plan, we called it a business plan. But what I've figured out, or think I've learned over time, is that what you're really trying to do as a founder and an owner of a business is to create a vision for where you want your enterprise to go. And that is a bigger idea and concept than a business plan. A business plan to me is just kind of the nuts and bolts of the implementation, whereas a vision is something larger. It's what is your unique value that you're bringing to the people you're serving. And it's not purely financial. If it's a purely financial, it's not compelling or large enough. And one thing I've learned is that is a role, that vision role is one that can only be done by the founder or the owner. You can't delegate that. You can't outsource it. If you don't have a vision, you don't have a visionary. And without a visionary, you really don't have an entrepreneurial growth business.
So was step one really trying to identify, I guess, the identity or the mission of the firm that you wanted to build?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, although I didn't think about it back at the time that we were starting our business, what we put together actually was a vision plan. It wasn't just a business plan. I want to go back to that in a moment and kind of share where we were then, and we can compare that to kind of where we are now and the evolution of it. But I just wanted to emphasize the importance of having a vision, and that why that's so important, because everybody who you're going to bring in and you're going to hopefully guide toward achieving your goals needs to share the vision and to feel energized and motivated by that vision. Not everybody will be. Not everyone buys into your vision, will feel energized and motivated by it. And those people shouldn't be working at your firm. And like on the flip side, there may be people at your firm that are more than willing to be energized and feel motivated and inspired by a vision, but they're not going to be able to do that if they don't know what it is. And that's the role of the founder and the leader. You not only have to have one, you have to effectively share it and communicate it to your team. And then you have to serve the role of, to some extent, the charismatic leader in persuading people of the importance of it and getting people to buy into it. You know, that's kind of a hallmark of some of the great leaders, whether it's Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk. I mean, some of these people, their personalities are very acerbic and difficult, but their teams are people that are built that have that shared vision. You know, if it's Elon Musk, you know, maniacal drive to whatever, succeed and, you know, getting a spaceship to Mars. I mean, most people don't have that and don't want that. They actually want to have a balanced life and spend time with their family and kids. And that's not who he wants in that business. So all the power to him, right? If that's what he wants, engineers that are going to sleep on the floor of their offices and have a maniacal drive and compromise the rest of their life to fulfill that goal, at least he knows what he wants. That's what he wants, and those are the people he attracts, and other people will go work somewhere else, right? They might work in an academic setting, or maybe they go work for NASA, but they're not going to be at SpaceX. So you need to know what your vision is, who you want, and bring people into that. Build a team of people that are all committed to your vision. I mean, it's quite a simple concept, but if you don't have a goal of knowing where you're heading, you're obviously not going to get there. Wherever it is you're trying to go, you're not going to ever get there.
I was going to say, I think before we kind of get into how you built your vision plan and set goals and everything, we can kind of update everyone on where we're at with our vision plan here internally. So as we've talked about before, we really launched our 4-year vision January of 2025. We're in Q3 of it, and Q3 is going to be an important quarter for us. So we've made the decision as a leadership team to add a couple more FTEs to our firm, and we've posted positions for a new litigation attorney and an additional legal assistant. So it's our goal to get to fully formed and fully built out litigation teams. And we're going to take our time making the decision, get the right culture fit and the right people in here, and add 2 more people to the Gideon Asen team. And we're excited for that.
Yeah, and I mean, just since you've arrived, I don't know how many people we've added already, but we've built out considerably over the last 6 months. But it wasn't just random growth; it was all growth around a specific vision and concept of what we're trying to build. And I think that's the overarching point of this episode, is that everything you're doing should be in service of some larger vision, and you need to know what it is and why you're doing it. And back to the concept of the vision. So, I mean, when people hear the word vision, I think, and there's the business plan terminology. I think when you hear the term business plan, you think of a boring kind of nuts and bolts document that's going to have like numbers in it, budgets and target numbers,
Graphs,
and graphs and charts and that stuff. And you think, well, that's kind of boring, but necessary to do if you want to be an adult and run a business, you have to have that stuff, right? On the other hand, people think of, at least I did, the vision is sort of the pie in the sky. Like, well, if I could design any future I wanted, what would it look like? And it tends to generate ideas like, I'd like to be lying on the beach drinking pina coladas and having other people manage my firm and making $1 billion a year. That's my vision. Okay. That concept of the vision is not what I'm talking about. A vision is not a pipe dream. It's not a set of wish lists, like a Christmas list. That's not what a real vision for a business is. There's this term BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, which is one of these semi-unfortunate business terms, but it's developed a following, and it's worth utilizing because I think it communicates something valuable in this conversation. And the idea of the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, is to create a vision large enough that it's worthy of your time and your life's commitment, and putting the effort into building a business, because this is an enormous investment of time and energy. Why would you do that if you don't have something big you're trying to accomplish? The big, hairy, audacious goal is not the pipe dream or the wish list. It's an actually achievable but very audacious and big goal. So, I mean, back to the SpaceX, their goal is to put a man on Mars, to colonize Mars, before their founder, dies probably. I mean, that's a big, hairy, audacious goal, but it's actually an achievable goal. I mean, we could send manned spacecraft to Mars. We could build a colony on Mars. It's something that is doable within the realm of human ability. And they've made enormous steps towards achieving that goal through lowering the cost of space travel and creating more powerful rockets and so forth. So that's a big, hairy, audacious goal, but not a pipe dream. And that's what I'm talking about. To be something big enough to galvanize your team around it, you need to have that, however you want to define it. And again, to sell it and communicate it and get everyone to buy in. So let me just stop there with the big, hairy, audacious goal concept and the difference between a goal and a pipe dream. We do have a big, hairy, audacious goal for our firm, which involves being able to essentially triple the number of deserving clients in the very significant cases we handle, that we can accommodate and represent at the high level we expect of ourselves to do that. And at the same time, to significantly increase our overall fee revenues. We have a 10 times goal for the fee revenues in the year before we embarked on this phase 2 vision. When you first read the vision statement and saw big, hairy, audacious goals we've set out, what was your reaction to that, Jeff? Did you think, well, that's crazy? Or did you think, well, that's not big enough? Or what? I'm just curious how you responded to seeing that for the first time.
I loved it. I mean, some people call them stretch goals, big, hairy, audacious goals. I love having kind of that pie in the sky thinking that may seem impossible to some people looking at it, but it's not. And everything we've put in place, it's that old saying, you keep your eye on the prize. I mean, all of our decisions, our new hiring decisions for Q3 are all in order to get us to the ultimate big, hairy, audacious goal of the number of qualified cases we're going to have, our 10xing of revenue. So I would love for us to, and our particular vision plan that was put together is a 4-year vision plan. I would love for us to be on year 3 and realize that that goal is more than achievable. We need to move it and have it a bigger target to get to. And I see no reason why we can't. So I looked at it as a challenge, and that suits my personality perfectly.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a big goal, but it's interesting when I drafted the vision statement and made that a goal, I thought if we, at least make good strides towards this goal, we'll have done really well. But gosh, I'm not sure this is even doable in 4 years or any amount of time. But the reality is we're 6 months into it, and it now seems very doable because we've already made great strides in all of the foundational things that we intended to put in place towards reaching this goal. And every little win you have gives you more confidence that you can do what you've set out to do. And it starts to feed on, it's like a positive reinforcing loop and it's been really rewarding to see that. We had talked in the last episode about how important having the vision framework is in guiding decision making. And I want to talk about why the vision's important, and I think I referenced in the last episode the seminar I went to, presided over by a venture capital person, talking about what you're looking for in a company to invest in it that has robust and good solid processes for making smart decisions. And one of those is that before you do something, you're modeling it out, because you can test and solve for a lot of things just doing the conceptual analysis of it without actually doing anything at all. And it doesn't cost anything. It's a brain exercise. And to me, that's a big part of a really good vision statement, is that it incorporates that modeling of assessing your goals and then the steps to achieve them, and then seeing if there's a cogency to that where it actually can be stated in a way that is internally consistent, and that you can't rip it apart just on the concept, that it actually makes sense when you put it down on paper. I mean, many plans don't, and you can figure that out before you embark on them. And so you're getting a long way towards solving for some of the more difficult problems just by doing that conceptual level analysis, and then putting it out to your team and having everybody else vet it too, and try to poke holes in it, figure out problems, and reassessing that. And so, for example, if you're going to 10x your revenue, right, you have to figure out things such as, what do we need for case inventory in order to, achieve 10 times the legal fees that we do today with our current inventory of cases, right? That's one question. How many cases do you need? Second question, what's the average value of those cases in terms of fee generation in order to get to that 10x number, right? You can figure all this out. It's all doable just on the back of a napkin. Number 3, how are you going to obtain that value for each of those cases that you need in order to get to that number? Number 4, where are those cases going to come from? how are you going to bring them into the practice, right? Number 5, how are you going to manage that workflow once it's in the practice to get it to that high level of valuation that you need? Because if you don't, and at the same time delivering your legal services at the very high levels of standards and quality you need in order to maintain and reinforce your own brand. And then looking at the competitive marketplace in your market area, I mean, is there that amount of work out there to be had? What are your competitors going to do when you start trying to obtain that additional work? If your business model depends on you having 1,000, let's say, criminal defense cases or immigration cases with an average fee of $10,000 per case, and you know for a fact that in your market area, all of the lawyers combined only have 500 cases, you know that that business model won't succeed. The landscape will not permit that to work, right? And there's just so many things you can do to assess the viability of your vision without having spent a single dollar or putting one foot in front of the other to do anything, right? If that vision requires you to have 4 more lawyers, and in order to achieve your ends, you need to pay each lawyer $75,000 a year, where the average market for lawyer in that industry is $250,000 a year. Again, you know you can't build that out. Your assumptions don't bear out on the data and the reality of the world that you're in. So we did a lot of thinking about that in terms of each of the elements that I put forth before. So by the time we had a fully fledged out vision statement, we've already solved a lot of problems that we might have encountered had we not done that exercise of carefully evaluating the plan as a model. And that's what I'm talking about, modeling. When I think about a vision plan is a modeling. It's modeling your game plan moving forward and continuing to improve that model until it's at least a viable model based on reality and fact. And I'd say the final point about modeling is to have a good model, it's only as good as the input data that you're putting into it. So garbage in, garbage out. But usually I think we all know when what you're putting in is just bullshit, right? I mean, if we put in a model where all of our average case settlement value was $10 million, we could put that in, but we know that's probably not going to happen, because a case that settles for $10 million may be on the high end as a outlier on a high case, but it's probably not going to be our average number across all of our cases anytime soon. And therefore, any business model that's based on that, it's just pie in the sky thinking. It's not an actual viable game plan that's been properly modeled out. And then once you have your model, that also helps you identify, okay, what are the metrics we need to track going forward to see if we're on track to achieve our plan. So I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. I mean, I felt bad in a way, Jeff, because like within the first 2 weeks of you starting at our firm, I handed you like a 20 to 25 page vision statement that had all this stuff in it. You had never been in the legal industry before. And then about 3 days later, we were on a flight to Colorado for a leadership team multi-day retreat, where you were expected to intelligently discuss many of the issues and to determine whether we had a viable vision plan for our phase 2 growth. I was very impressed actually with your ability to assimilate all that quickly and to contribute valuably to that discussion. But I imagine from your perspective, that was a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I don't get intimidated easily. I've kind of been there, done that, seen it. But yeah, it was intimidating. Like you said, I got handed the plan 4 days after I started. I'm flying to Colorado with the owners of a firm, and I'm expected to participate. And it was a little daunting. But after I read the plan a few times, I loved it. And I was excited to start it and kick it off. and I absorbed it well, and it actually wound up being to my benefit. We always talk about, you throw somebody in the fire and see how they're doing, but it accelerated my growth here exponentially because I had to get up to speed in 72 hours as opposed to a month of a honeymoon period here getting to know things. And it was invaluable for me to have really the undivided attention of the leadership team for 3 days out of the gate and be able to spend time from you. And obviously I listened probably 95% of the time as you guys were having the discussions, but I absorbed all that. And when I was able to pick and choose my opportunities where I thought I could add value out of the gate from past experiences, and then even after that, we got back from Colorado, and then we had an all employee retreat to kick off the vision plan. You had no idea what the reaction was going to be. I certainly didn't know. I didn't even know everyone's name yet at the firm. So it was quick, but at the end of the day, it worked out great.
Yeah, yeah, it really did. So, I mean, that whole process came out of, I'm talking like I have some authority on this, but actually what the process of developing that phase two vision came out of a leadership team meeting where one of the people on our team turned to me and said, so we were about 4 years into our business at that point, and this is someone who had been with us for almost the entire journey. It started about 6 months after our launch. And she turned to me during the meeting and said, "What's your vision for our future? I have no idea what you guys want to do, where we're going with this business." And I thought to myself, holy shit, she's 100% right. We have no plan. We have no vision. What happened was we had a mission statement and a business plan when we launched our firm around January of 2020, right at the in the midst of the COVID pandemic. We had a vision. We had implemented it. We had succeeded in accomplishing everything we had set out to do in that early vision. And we were very happy because our firm was doing well and we were successful, but we had no plan. We had no plan for what was next. Zero. We just were like, okay, things are going well and let's just keep it going. But what I realized is that doesn't work. People want to know where we're going. What are we doing? Like we're having leadership team meetings. Why are we meeting? What's this all about? And I just thought it was such a great milestone point because the two owners, myself and my partner, didn't even realize we had no vision and no plan at that point. But somebody else on the team had the insight to point that out to us. And then that's what led to this whole creation of the phase two vision, which has been a major, obviously, game changer in terms of where we're heading now and given us some direction.
Need help on a complex personal injury or medical malpractice case? Gideon Asen accepts case referrals and regularly co-counsels with lawyers nationwide on high-value claims. The firm has recovered millions of dollars in cases that competitors turned away because they dig deeper. Ready to learn more? Email bgideon@gideonasenlaw.com to start the conversation. Gideon Asen shares fees as permitted by the laws of each state. Don't let complex cases overwhelm your practice. Elevate justice together with Gideon Asen.
I just want to go back, though, for the folks listening and thinking, okay, well, it sounds like you guys have already moved on to the phase two vision, but how about the phase one vision? Because I'm still at that point, and I want to know what I'm supposed to do when I'm in the early phases and just starting my business, and what does that look like? I want to share with the listeners a little bit about that so you can kind of get hopefully this will help folks who are at that very beginning stage. And we will be circling back to the phase two vision in the future. In fact, I think we have someone coming on who wrote a book, which is one that utilized heavily in helping to craft the phase 2 vision. And we can talk to him about that. So back to the original mission statement. I actually pulled it up. It's in front of me now, so I can actually reference the real document. And we know I'm being honest and not just doing your revisionist history here. So the original document, this is dated 2020, and the title is Mission Statement, Business Plan, and then it has 4 exhibits. Exhibit A is key performance indicators. Exhibit B is budget. Exhibit C is marketing and business development plan. And Exhibit D is job descriptions. So we had come up with a fairly comprehensive roadmap for what we were trying to do, even from the outset, recognizing a lot of the different elements that were going to go into it, which I'm proud of that, because at that point it was just me and my partner and one paralegal. And I'm not going to go through this in great detail. I am willing to share with listeners if they reach out to me personally, and happy. And that goes with almost any of our materials that we've created, operations, policies, budgets, vision statements. I'm happy to share those on an individual basis with lawyers who are interested in that. But so our original mission statement started out saying Gideon Asen LLC will be a market leader and achieve market dominance in Maine and northern New England for handling complex, high value added medical malpractice, personal injury, products liability, and related matters on a contingent fee basis. Gideon Asen will achieve this by promoting the high quality, experience, education, and legal pedigree, knowledge and experience of its attorneys, and the experience and caring of its key staff. And it goes on a little bit from there. The next section is discussing our firm culture and values, which I won't get into, but was important. We then had a 1-year mission specific goals. So what we were going to accomplish in our first year of business. We then had a set of 5-year goals. So what we expected to accomplish over our first 5 years. And that set of 5-year goals included target revenue numbers for year 1 through year 5. So we're, a fairly specific set of goals. And I'm very proud that we met those goals each year. And each year our revenue targets were $1 million above the revenue targets of the last year. So we were increasing revenues by at least $1 million year over year. And we, for the first 5 years, achieved those goals. The business plan included where the money was going to come from to fund the firm. So a capital investment plan talked about where our clients were going to come from. It talked about firm governance and management. And that was allocating areas of responsibility between me and my partner. So we had a list of about 20 things, and each one of those things had one of our names next to it. So there was clear responsibility for who was going to do what. We had a section on systems. And I think this is really something that's been key to our success from the outset. And again, I think I'm proud that we recognized that and started it early. But and going back to that original vision statement and business plan, what it says here under systems is that an important part will be developing robust and efficient systems for managing the firm and its growth. The systems will seek to maximize attorney and staff focus on higher skill and value added work while delegating or outsourcing routine clerical administrative tasks. The areas where systems will be developed include firm management, intake, case management, operations and administration, marketing, and business development. And from the very outset, those systems were translated into policies that were reduced to writing and started to create the foundation of our operations manual, which is now a very well-developed and fairly extensive set of policies and systems that is sort of the core to how we run our business. But we started that on day one because what we recognized is when we invested time in figuring something out and trying to get it right, we wanted to institutionalize that. So we weren't reinventing the wheel. We were being more efficient, and we were codifying best practices to create consistency across the board. And that's been really important. And I'm going to pause there because that's such a big part of what you've been working on recently, Jeff, in building out this additional unit of the firm. And you came into it, one of the people you're working with was one of our early adopters. And I would say she has a maniacal adherence to policies and systems, which I've always thought was it can be a liability on occasion, but for the most part, it's incredibly valuable to have somebody like a champion of systems. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Christine is an absolute whiz, and I think maniacal is a perfect term for it when it comes to policies, procedures. She's our director of finance and internal controls, and she takes her job very seriously, and we love her for it. But yeah, but it's come in so handy with the build out of our intake and evaluation unit that didn't exist outside of the vision plan 3 months ago. That's a unit that was developed on paper in the vision plan to bring in an attorney, a paralegal, and an intake coordinator to be able to vet the cases, handle cases that don't have to make their way to the litigation department, drive revenue, drive referrals. And we've went from on paper to having a fully built out department within 3 months. And we did that all in Q2. We made 3 hires, and Christine has been very instrumental in helping to train and write the procedures for that. We have relatively fully built out processes and procedures. And the biggest thing especially when you're doing something new, is again, have the flexibility to see what's working, what's not working, and not follow down a bad path too far and adjust. But it's not a matter of forcing everyone to do everything in a very methodical way where it's robotic, but it's providing guidance, and it's being able to replicate something that you already know works. And I think that's the key.
Yeah, what's amazing is, for example, with our intake coordinator, we had somebody who had been with us a couple of years, and she left, and we hired somebody to replace her. And we have such well-developed systems that once she's trained on that, within just a couple of weeks, she was doing that job incredibly well, probably at least as well as the person who left. And there was no drop-off in the quality or the procedures that were followed. And the other thing I love about it is we encourage all of our personnel to identify areas of weakness or improvements that can be made to our systems, and we're constantly refining those. People take great pride in that, and they may identify something that we can do better, and then we improve it. And so what we do, for instance, intake now and how that process works is vastly better than it was a couple of years ago, because we've just continued to refine and improve. And it seems like that's something that will never end. We'll continually trying to do better than we did before.
I mean, we as a group, the intake coordinator, Christine, myself, took 2 webinars on new processes for AI to help the intake process. So it's constantly going to be evolving. It's constantly going to become more efficient for us, and we'll adopt things that make sense that will help us with our growth plan. So again, it's being nimble and flexible to continue moving forward and being okay with change.
Back to the original mission statement, one of the topics in that is entitled Annual Planning Meeting / Retreat. And it says, 1 time each year, attorneys and key staff will attend an annual planning meeting and retreat in which the mission statement will be discussed, revised, and a new business plan developed for the following year. We have, from our very first year, done that year in and year out. And you can make a case that when you only have 2 or 3 employees, why are you taking a full day or a couple days to do a retreat to go over the stuff? Maybe that's something you'd think of for a large corporation, but why do you need that? But it's been really valuable for us to be doing it from the earliest days. You mentioned our core values in the last episode and how we developed those, but those were developed with the input of all of our staff at one of our annual retreats. And those carried us through for several years until we revised the core values and improved on them. But it's been valuable to us to have, there's that book by Jim Collins, the business consultant, who called Good to Great. I think he also wrote a book called Built to Last, but these are two of the core sort of business canon books. And the Good to Great book, which we've both read, is that one of the points he makes about what distinguishes great companies is you think about them as, where was the point in time where they were kind of a fledgling business that was doing things poorly, and then there was some transition to greatness. But one of the points he makes is that great companies have always been great because they always envisioned themselves as a great business, even when they were young. And they treated themselves like that by doing many of these types of exercises or having programs in place that might think were only reserved for kind of the top tier companies, but they always viewed themselves as being that, even when they were small. And I feel like we've always kind of treated it that way. Just a few more things to think about in the original plan. So we had a initial marketing and business development strategy, and we'll devote full episodes to the subject of marketing. But one of our key insights to our original marketing and branding was that we had one opportunity to introduce ourselves to the community as a new business. Now, I had a pretty known reputation, which was helpful when we launched the business, which helped us kind of hit the ground running and getting case referrals and so forth. But nevertheless, our firm as a firm never existed before. And so to introduce our firm and our unique brand, we had one opportunity to do that. And there's a lot of marketing experts will tell you, and I fully buy into this from my own experience, that the best model for successful marketing for growth is to start with the narrowest viable market sector and distinguish yourself as the true leader and expert in that market. Because if you're competing generally, you don't have as much value added to offer as you do in the area of your one narrow, best unique skill set. And so what we did, and we were very strategic about this, for the first couple years of our existence, every element of marketing we did, and we marketed, I'm only talking to B2B marketing. We were marketing for referral business. To date, we have not done any direct to consumer marketing, although that's going to change coming up. But as of now, we've not done direct to consumer marketing. Almost all of our business has come from referrals from other lawyers. We distinguished ourselves as the go-to law firm for medical malpractice cases in our venue. And we did that by every marketing branding effort we did to the legal community was focused solely on medical malpractice. We wrote regular articles in our trade journals, and for the first couple of years, every one of those was focused on an element of medical malpractice. We published a book and circulated that to every lawyer in the state, focused only on the subject of medical malpractice. And as a result, over that 2-year period, we started to receive huge numbers of referrals from lawyers for medical malpractice cases. I think at one point we looked at the numbers and we had referrals from over 400 separate lawyers coming into our office, the vast majority of them on medical malpractice, because we developed that brand as these are the guys to talk to if you have a medical malpractice case. What's been interesting about that is that really through no major effort, that distinctive brand we developed as the go-to firm for medical malpractice has spawned other types of cases, because my theory is that in the plaintiff's bar, in the legal community, people believe that medical malpractice cases are very difficult, expensive, and hard cases to do. And if you're good enough to do that kind of case, you're probably good enough to do other cases that are easier and less expensive and less difficult to do. And so we've started to get many referrals for non-medical malpractice cases, even though we never really targeted those through our marketing efforts. I think if we had gone a different route and initially presented ourselves as jack of all trades lawyers doing, general personal injury cases, our growth would have been stifled from the outset. We would have been competing with every, Tom, Dick, and Harry lawyer out there that's trolling for plaintiffs' cases. There's dozens and dozens of them. It's very hard to distinguish between those lawyers. Depending on the type of case, a lot of those cases are much easier to do. Many lawyers don't need to refer them. They can do them themselves, so they hold on to them. We just wouldn't have cultivated the referral business and the relationships we've had that have allowed us our very significant ability to grow if we had done it the reverse way. And I think that's a great lesson for any lawyer in any field, whatever your field is. Start your business by focusing, laser focused on what is that one thing, the smallest viable market niche where you bring the highest value added, where that sell is just so easy because it's a no-brainer for people. And once you've consolidated and dominated that, then that's a great platform to build onto something else. You've now proven the value proposition. You've developed the relationships. It's easy to transition that to other things, where going in the other direction is just extremely difficult. So we did that from the outset. It was very, very successful. And I think an enormous part of our ability to succeed.
I was just going to say, I love that point, because too many businesses want to be everything to everybody out of the gate, and they don't focus on what they do best. And I saw it coming from the banking world. Every state has small banks or credit unions in it, and then all of a sudden one of the big boys moves in, whether it's a Citibank or a Wells Fargo or a Bank of America or a Key Bank or what have you. And the small banks all of a sudden want to do brokerage, they want to do trusts, they want to do insurance, and they lose focus on what they did really well. And for some of them, it works, but for a vast majority of them, because they've lost the focus on their initial mission and what they could do best for their communities, it backfired. And so I think your point is so spot on, and really relates to multiple industries.
It also, when you're starting a new business and you don't have the capital resources, the marketing budget, if you're starting a restaurant in your community and you want to go head to head with McDonald's to be the fast food burger joint, to have the low cost options, to do all the things McDonald's is doing, but do it better and to outmarket them, you're setting yourself up to fail. You're not going to be better at being McDonald's than McDonald's is, right? If you want to start a restaurant in your local community and be the best high-end seafood restaurant, tapping into the local main catch and to serve locally sourced produce from local farms, and you do that really well, you have a great opportunity to distinguish yourself and create a unique brand that's going to appeal to a certain segment of the market. And that's what we did. That we were appealing to that segment of the market. We wanted the people that had the significant high value cases that needed something different than the mass whiplash or personal injury lawyer. And I think that whatever field you're in, that principle applies, especially now because there's such a nationalization and consolidation of industry where you have to distinguish yourself or you're going to fail, because you're just not going to compete with multi-state, large, deep pocket businesses, law firms, or whatever that have already perfected doing something and competing just on volume and price. Finally, just to round it out here, one of the things we did early in our firm launch was to identify all of the roles within the office that needed to be performed and to assign somebody as responsible for each of those roles. So we had, and keep in mind, at this point, we had myself, my partner, and one paralegal, but we created a finance director, a human resources director, a marketing director, an intake coordinator, a legal services director, a plant operations manager. Our organizational chart at our launch had all of those roles in our org chart. every one of them. And we had a job description for each role, such as the plant operations manager is responsible for the physical plant and buildings and equipment that we need in each of we launched with 3 different offices, desks, computers, and so forth. Every one of those seats was filled from the outset. They were just filled by either me or my partner. So I was marketing and business development. He was finance and accounting. He was plant operations. I was legal services. He was HR. As you can see, he got the short end of the stick and got all the bad ones. And each of us signed a job description for what we were responsible for in each of those areas, to idea that somebody had to be accountable for them, even if we didn't actually have someone to fill the seat yet. And that worked well for us for a couple of years. And I remember looking at that org chart with all of these seats that were unfilled, thinking, I mean, it's a pipe dream that we're ever going to have those seats filled by actual people. I mean, that we need like 10 new people here to have all those seats filled. They're almost all filled now. And it's been really rewarding to see that. It's also been very gratifying to not have to do all those jobs. But by having that organizational structure, it was really important to us because first of all, we identified core functions that needed to be done. IT was another one of them. I had that one, but so we had all the core functions. They needed to be done, even if we didn't have people in the roles yet. And it helped to really give us a roadmap for what does a fully built out firm look like, so that as we went, we could gradually put those pieces in place to build it out. So that kind of rounds out my discussion of what our original mission statement and business plan looked like. We will later talk about our phase 2 vision, and that's much different than what the original plan was, obviously, and much more ambitious. But in the few minutes of remaining time, Jeff, I'm interested in your thoughts on, you obviously were not here for the first, 4.5 years that you never saw Gideon Asen under Vision Plan 1.0, but I'm curious from your own business background and experience, how that squares with your thinking about building and growing a business.
That's the first time I heard that you guys actually wrote job descriptions for those positions, and I pictured you guys scrambling and being like, all right, who's going to handle this, who's going to handle that? But it sounds like you had, and it goes back to our last episode about decisions and who was going to be responsible for those things and who was going to make the decisions for them. I actually think that's a fantastic idea that I hadn't heard before. And you guys obviously did something right, because you were able to scale that business quickly, and then within 4 years really wrap up phase 1, as you said, and had to create a vision for phase 2 that we're in the midst of now. So it's hard to critique it because you did it right.
Yeah, I will say there was definitely some pain at transition. For instance, as you know, my partner we had him as HR. And so all of the staff that we hired originally became very used to dealing with him on any HR or internal related issue. I think he would be the first to acknowledge that probably didn't turn out to be his strong suit. It ended up creating problems because people would play him off against me. And then once we changed that reporting structure and I took that responsibility over from him, people didn't want to change, because he's actually much kinder and gentler and nicer, and some would say more permissive. So as we started to put a little bit more stricter rules in place, the original people that came in under his regime as HR, and this is just one example. I mean, there's lots of examples probably where I started doing something and didn't. The transition can be difficult because people get used to one person doing it, and that changes as you grow, but you need to change. But for the time at the early days, it worked. It worked. He took responsibility for HR. He did a good job with that. That is what needed to be done in those early days.
Yeah, and there's always bumps and transitions. I mean, we'll get to it in a later episode, the transition when I came on. we had bumps in the road, and we had people bucking the change, I guess, for lack of a better term, and we made decisions as a team, and it's working well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we can call it a day on this episode. I think we covered a lot. I appreciate it. And I'm doing too much talking, but that's because we're still back in the phase before you arrived. And as we get to more of our modern look, that'll involve more of the things you've been directly involved in. But I'm trying to help bring us up to date with some historical stuff before, it's just so people can follow the journey along. I don't want to jump ahead too far, because if I were in the early phases, I wouldn't like that as a lawyer. I would need to know what to do first before you got to walk before you can run. So that's kind of what we're doing here. For those that are at a more advanced phase of their business, they should fast forward to probably later episodes, or check out some of our episodes with some of the guests, because we're talking about slightly more advanced topics with them early on. I appreciate everybody being here. Again, feel free to reach out. Some folks have already reached out to me directly. Always happy to do that. I'm sure Jeff would be happy to talk to folks too.
More
have
than
questions
happy.
from a COO standpoint.
I'm actually learning things along with the listeners, because I wasn't here for the beginning of this, and I love the genesis of the firm and where it was, where we are now, and we're going to take people to where we're going. So it's working well for me, even though you're doing 98% of the talking.
But the 2% of most valuable stuff still coming from you.
I would think
See you next time.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for listening to Elevate, Build and Grow Your Law Firm. Share with colleagues if you found it valuable. Remember, building a successful law firm takes discipline, strategy, and determination. But you're not alone. Produced and powered by Law Pods.